table and get one, or Nikki can bring some down to you. And you can sit anywhere you like. A little bit later, we're going to ask you to come over and sit at one of the tables where the objectives are listed. So at some point, we'll ask you to move a little bit later. We have a relatively small but very dedicated, thank you, group tonight on such a wonderful evening. We were joking that it wouldn't be a Project Parkway meeting if it weren't raining or snowing. I think just about every meeting we've had in the past year, it's been not good weather. So thank you for coming tonight. This is our last meeting of the full Project Parkway group for the school year. And you see the agenda in front of you. We've got a lot to cover tonight. And I think we'll just get right into it. And with that, I'll introduce Dr. Tim Hudson, who will begin to talk about the latest version of the CSIP. Tim.
All right. Raise your hand if you're a Parkway employee here. Cool. Parent? Got some parents? Just community member, non-parent? Students? I see some students. They wore their uniform. The black hoodie. All right, well, welcome. What I'd like to start with the first 20 minutes. Over this weekend, I read all of the feedback that's been given so far to the CSIP plan online. Very engaging and compelling. Lot of stuff on there. Really exciting. The steering committee is going to be pouring over it on Wednesday. And I'm going to share a couple of highlights, a couple of patterns of feedback, because tonight we're going to do a similar thing to what we did at the last meeting, which is we're going to look at this again one last time before the steering committee looks at it, and then we're looking at presenting it to the board on May 4th. So because we're doing some similar things tonight that we've done previously, I wanted to give you an update on some of the things that have already been said, help us make sense of all of this and inform our thinking and help us all learn together as we move forward with our new mission. So general feedback patterns, things that came out. First of all, there were a lot of questions on there, which is good because one of the first questions, of course, how can we measure whatever, insert thing here? A lot of questions like that. And like here's one sample comment, and I don't know who said these. It was all anonymous when I was looking at it. There does seem to be an overemphasis on data collection. Not everything can or needs to be quantified. How do you measure passion, desire, or spirit? And there is a way to measure passion. That's why we have a word for passion. We noticed something and we were like, hey, that looks like, and we had to invent a word for the passion. But here's the principle that's underlying all this. If it matters at all, if it is detectable, it can be detected as an amount or a range of possible amounts. And then finally, the finish, if it can be detected as a range of possible amounts, it is measurable from the book How to Measure Anything. Who's read it? Excellent. So we got three or four. Excellent. Cool. That's all I've read of it. But I assume the rest of it was good. Good little logic there. So we have to keep that in mind. All of these things can be measured. It's just going to require some innovation and creativity. Another thing we want to figure it out. Another feedback pattern. How will we find time for, and then again, insert whatever goal or whatever is there for. Here's a couple of comments along those lines. What will be removed from the curriculum to make time for global problem solving? Adding a journal will take away from the already stretched learning day. What a wonderful idea for teachers to ask students what goals they have for themselves. Is there additional time for teachers to work with students to create these goals? A couple of things about time and how we spend our time, especially with our new mission. We really have to think, is our new mission just an add-on to what we've always done? Or does it mean we strategically change our habits and structures? That's really what we have to be thinking about. Mission isn't an add-on. Mission is the thing. And here's a quote that kind of said this nicely. We would need to offer things that the average school does not have that encourages their creativity. More artsy classes, more strategic thinking type classes, things that are outside the realm of normal education. Thought that was a nice feedback comment. You like that? It's kind of what we're talking about, because our mission is unique. Our mission is different. So what we have to do is prioritize and reprioritize, perhaps without making assumptions about our habits and traditions. That's a lot of what we've been talking about with our mission. And really this question, a few comments talked about kids needing the basics or whatever. And I just wonder, are the basics the same as they've always been? And I think there's compelling reason to believe they've changed to some degree. Here's another one. For what ages is blank appropriate? A couple of things that came through there. New challenges in and out of school. Monitoring creativity, personal health journals, global challenges. What sort of global challenges should a second grader be? How do you monitor the creativity of an 18-year-old? Those sorts of questions, which are great questions. We know we can measure it, so the question is when and how. I think our second grade science curriculum talks about the water cycle. And is that right? Excellent. What a great time to talk about water supplies around the country. The transfer task and plan it. The transfer task there is what happens when something in that cycle gets changed. So, really good questions about that. Another one, without home support, how can we accomplish blank? That came up as a pattern of feedback in a lot of the comments. Here were a couple of them. Here's one of them. How will the students on free and reduced lunch make the growth targets? Not even get the support at home. And a couple of things. This is precisely our charge and our challenge. This is exactly our obligation to our children in the community. And when I think about that question, I'm wondering, and I don't even remember the context because it was pulled out of a larger comment, is that a rhetorical question or is that an actionable question? Because the way you read that really impacts how we perceive our work. To say they don't get support at home, what can we do? How will they do it? That's our obligation to figure that out. Given that a student is homeless or receives no support at home, how will we accomplish our mission for that child? That is our question. We can't say, well, they don't even have a home, so we can't accomplish the mission. We have to say, in light of that, given that. So we have to operate with things that are in our control. And this is a quote from an article that was just in the last month's Journal of Staff Development from Susie Scott. I think she's the one that wrote Fierce Conversations. And I think this is very relevant to our work, considering that pattern of comment. When we become entrenched in feeling powerless, we put time and energy into identifying all of the reasons why we can't do something instead of focusing on what we can do to accomplish our goals. One shift in our outlook on any situation can change everything about the results we produce. And that's what our mission is doing. It's causing us to shift our thinking. Also, the research from Visible Learning, which we've looked at for a long time, there were, of the top 45 factors positively influencing student achievement, only 3 were home-level factors. Number 31 was home environment, 32 socioeconomic status, and 45 parental involvement, which is to say that there are 43 other things, and in fact the top 30 are things within our control. Student level factors, teaching level factors, teacher level factors, school level factors, and curricula. The things we control in these 5 areas all outweigh the influence of those 3. And that's based on 20 years worth of research synthesized from thousands and thousands of studies. So we can make a difference. Here are a couple miscellaneous things that came through, and then I'll talk specifically about individual goal pieces. A lot of people ask all those sorts of questions, which we as a steering committee wrestled with in developing our mission and kind of decided, they're all interconnected, they're independent. It's not that one is better than the other. You can't be capable unless you're curious. You can't be, well, they're all interrelated. I won't go through all of the different ways you can combine them. Think of like a Venn diagram. And the other thing is all 3 of them modify the word learners. We aren't, there's a difference between a confident person, who you might be like, hey, this is some ego or something like that, and a confident learner to say, I can learn this, and I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to work at it. A lot of comments saying, if the district wants to do this or is doing this, things like they, a lot of, well, I guess I'd rather have seen a lot of our district, a lot of we, but I didn't see a lot of that, which means we have a ways to go with making sure everybody understands this, making sure everybody owns it. But definitely more of this than our district and we. Talk to your neighbor about why that might be. Real quick. Take a second. Why are we hearing more they and the district than we and our district? Take about 30 seconds to wrap up that thought. There were a couple of comments that I thought were interesting about how will we communicate individual students' progress toward mission. I think one comment said, you know, what should we have the mission indicators somewhere on the elementary report card, that sort of thing. How are we monitoring this and reporting it? And then finally, when will we be done with UBD? That question came up. And I'm pretty sure the answer is, well, if understanding by design is planning backward from the goals and want, I hope we're never going to be done with it, but that was one that came. That wasn't really a pattern. That was just one isolated comment that I thought I'd throw in at this point for a humorous interlude. Okay, specific goal feedback. Now this is going to be important because in about 5 minutes we're going to break up, and the pink is goal 1, the green is goal 2, the gray is goal 3. We're gonna pick areas again and get our minds around this. And so I want to real quick run through a couple of patterns of the feedback so far from the goals. So goal 1, there were several comments about, is there an overemphasis on testing? Like, you know, we're losing the human element of raising and educating children. This has always been the best strength of Parkway, and we aren't. I mean, goal 1 is very test-driven. But I think the rest of the strategic plan indicates the commitment to tons of other things. Seems like we're teaching in order to test. This is the danger of overemphasizing data. You lose sight of the fact that these are kids who require love, nurturing, and support. These are the things the teachers of Parkway should be providing and are providing, but with very clear outcomes for what should result from that nurture and care. So still a lot of as we make sense of our new mission. Concerns about all. This was probably the biggest pattern in Goal 1. There's a how will all of the students. People saying all is impossible. These goals are set up for failure. Expecting all students to be divergent creative thinkers. Not all students are programmed to think that way. The same is unrealistic. That's one of the things as we learn more about creativity, we know that our kindergartners, by and large, have this capacity for the creativity. So this idea of how do they think and how do we make sure all kids. I'm not sure we can reasonably say all students will score above the national average, and then talking about low IQs and things. So we need to, over the next 5 years, be really clear about what IQ means, what's its history, what are its appropriate uses, what are its inappropriate uses. I mean, those sorts of things still are very, we need to make more sense of it, I guess, in light of our new mission. ACT testing, a lot of comments here. Nobody said, hey, great goal, let's do it. That didn't come through. Instead, a lot of things, the goal looks like it's written to make the district look good rather than for student success. I don't think it was written to make the district look good because it's a high goal. It's something we're striving for. I think this is a goal that doesn't take into account the students who've been passed along and or don't try. There's another question. What happens when we do not meet it? Good question. Related to ACT testing, somebody mentioned what's the future of the ACT, and I'd throw in there of the AP. Some districts don't use them. Some districts stop using the AP exam. These are, part of the conversation. What's the purpose of the ACT? Who should take it, and how should they perform? And we've made some decisions about that in Parkway. And now that we have it as a goal, it's one of those, oh, wow, now I guess we need to have a more vigorous conversation about it. Bottom line, college preparation is career readiness. You read any of the literature, any of the articles, that's the key. So it's not as though the ACT doesn't prepare kids for career in some way. Those are some things to consider. The graduation rate. We have, the courses need to be relevant to the students, even the non-college bound students. We need to make sure we're meeting all the needs of all the students. Ensuring all students graduate is an impossible task. This is something that has to do with the students' willingness to learn, their family lives, and the values that are instilled in them. These are all points of conversation and patterns that emerge from the comments about this goal. So if you sit down and talk about the graduation goal, have some conversations about these. How do we avoid watering down a diploma? That sort of came out there too. That if we say all, does that mean our is a great article actually from Grant Wiggins this past month in Educational Leadership called A Diploma Worth Having. Some really interesting ideas in there. And the need for more individualization. Well-prepared graduates. Here was one comment that kind of stood out to me. How on earth will an 18-year-old be able to say that they are well-prepared? It seems like this can only be gauged further down the road. That is true in some regards, but I thought we might have some 18-year-olds here. Any of y'all 18? Will you be yeah, you'll be 18 soon. Cool. But you're what, 17? Okay. You know what? Sit at the table with them. They'll tell you if they feel like they're well prepared or not. No, you're not well prepared, or you're not going to answer the question. We need a spotlight. It's just not enough that everyone looks at you. We need to really. Anyway, so that's something to consider. What do 18-year-olds know about how well they are prepared? What about 6th graders? How well do 6th graders know what they're prepared for? Goal 2, curious learners, feedback patterns, global challenges. Somebody mentioned that problems and solutions closer to home can also be meaningful and encourage creativity, which is an excellent point. When we said global problem solving, I mean, there are problems to solve within our own communities. So, good comment there, worth discussing. Capable. And we kind of gone back and forth about that. So, good thinking there. Hold on. Here was one interesting comment. One of the first ones, I think, after we met, somebody hopped online and the 20 global problems that I mentioned about climate change and education for all those things would be how these topics would be taught. Would both sides of, say, global warming be taught? There are naysayers with strong evidence also. So the big question is, will Parkway arm the students with unbiased information and allow the students to be curious learners and determine what they want to believe? I was concerned about a number of the topics that could be taught with only one vision. When I shared my thoughts with my friend who was next to me at the meeting, she said right off the bat, "Are you a Republican?" It's nice to read comments like that. Good thinking there. Right offhand, we know there's some sort of false dichotomy, pigeonholing people into certain political viewpoints, when in fact everyone's political views are probably more finely nuanced. And of course, that was something that I personally chose to share, having been shared with a colleague, as just some ideas to consider. That, I do know, and I am aware that right now, the water that I have coming to my home has to come from somewhere, has to get cleaned somehow, and I can't imagine there's an infinite amount of it anywhere. And I know that there are people around the globe who don't have the water that I have, and I want to make sure that my children have the water that I have. So, at what point we started getting into politics, that's a great question. How do we solve any climate problems that we may have if we agree that there are some problems? That even the authors of Super Freakonomics, anybody read Super Freakonomics? They came under a little bit of I don't know if you'd call it political fire, but they said, regardless of whether there is a problem with the climate, the carbon credit idea is not going to work. Wasn't that what they talked about? So even if we agree on the problem, then the way we go about solving it, there's a whole other question. Do we know where our trash goes? Do y'all know where your trash goes? I read recently that the largest landfill in the United States will be full in under 2 years. I don't know where that is. I'm always wondering, do I throw my batteries away? Do you throw batteries away? Some people say you put it in a paper bag, and that gets the job done. But I don't see a bin at Home Depot for it, so I've actually just got a bucket of batteries in my garage, which probably over time won't be the most safe thing, but I don't know what to do with them. Anybody know? What do you do with them? People watching online right now. What do you do? Here? In Park? Look, it's a big place. I didn't know that. You recycle them here in those gray bins? No, I'm kidding. Cool. Well, I hope you got a wheelbarrow. Or even the one, do y'all know our cell phones are all powered on lithium-ion batteries? Where do we get our lithium? Anybody know? Bolivia. Huge resources of lithium. I saw somebody nod. I don't know if they actually knew that. But what happens if there's political unrest in Bolivia and our iPhones won't charge? This is a crazy place that we're living right now. Can't believe this is going out online. All right. So again, what are the 21st century basics? What do we need to know? It's not about a politically driven thing. It's about realities of the future for our kids. Okay, curiosity and creativity. Somebody wrote, I feel this is important, but not nearly as important as all students being capable learners. We need to focus on the basics for many students, reading, writing, math. It does no good to move students along who do not know the basics. And then a couple of comments after that. All kids start kindergarten, excited to go to school and learn reading, math, cursive, etc. Nobody starts thinking, I'm dumb, I can't learn this stuff. We need to not crush that feeling. And those who are most curious and remain that way are also the ones who become confident and capable. And that's more of the conversation that we had at the steering committee and sort of one of the things we've committed to. Curiosity and creativity. How do you measure creativity without mentioning the arts? That came through on a couple of questions. But nobody said, how do you measure creativity without mentioning science? So many of the things that we have now and we enjoy are scientifically creative ideas. Cancer treatments, medical research, this all requires some element of creativity. So we don't want to isolate creativity just to one area, which is part of the reason we made our mission and vision non-content specific. It doesn't say anything about mathematics, for example. Okay. And then a couple of questions. How do you standardize a creativity test? Is that oxymoronic in some way? And it's just that nuance of we assess in a standard way, but not necessarily looking for the exact same outcomes. Kind of like those cooking contests. Everybody gets the same ingredients, and then you got to figure something out. Do they actually have contests like that? I imagine they do. Yeah. Y'all know a lot of stuff. Okay. One unique thought I want to share, and then we'll wrap it up with goal 3, one slide, and then get to talking. We've talked about how pursuing student curiosity and creativity is something not a lot of districts have done, and there aren't a lot of models for us to follow. And one comment really recognized that. They wrote this on our Curious Learner goal. You have no map to success for this one, as in we're kind of we're trailblazing. You could have written, capture, tag, and release unicorns for recapture. I thought that was kind of funny. Because that's true. We are creating something fairly new. Is that a standard line recapture with unicorns? I don't know. I didn't know if that was is that an old saying? No. Y'all didn't think it was nearly as funny as I did. I'm disappointed by that, but there was a lot of things to read, and I was curious about that one. All right. Finally, last slide, goal 3, confident learners. A lot of people saying this isn't as important as capable learners. Really making that distinction of confident learner, like I mentioned earlier. Here's one example. Americans are the least competent but most confident in math. The take-home is they were unconsciously incompetent. Confidence is good only if grown from competence. Now, it is possible to be unconsciously incompetent. Kind of rolls off the tongue. But we're talking about being a confident learner, not so much confidence like that. Convince kids learning is important. Have classes to convince them school is important. Ask the students their thoughts, which is exactly what we're going to be doing tonight. Hopefully, all of our classes are relevant enough that we don't have to say this is important. But we'll probably have to continue saying that for some time. So what I'd like to do now, and I know this is why you came, is get into our small group discussion 1. So that means everybody needs to pick one of the objectives. Could be the one you went to last time if you already feel you got a good handle on that. Or if that didn't go so well, you can start fresh tonight at a new table. And we will talk about that for, again, just collecting more feedback. There's feedback sheets on there, and we'll have a good conversation, keeping in mind some of the feedback that we've already gotten so far. Yeah, you will get to pick twice. So we'll do this, one group for about 20 minutes, and then you'll get to switch. Take about 3 minutes. 3 minutes to wrap up your conversation and finish taking your notes. All right, please complete your thoughts and make a decision about where you're going to go next. And we'll have a 3.5-minute passing time for you to go to the next table. And feel free to bribe the students. What do y'all like? Twix? Snickers? They'll come to your table if you have candy, yeah. Yeah, you will need to stand up. No just scooting your chairs around. Have about three and a half more minutes. 3.5 more minutes. All right, take about 30 seconds to wrap that thought up and finish writing down your group's notes. Thank you.
Hey, my favorite one was create a class to teach kids how to like school, how to self-learn. It's great.
You gotta sell it.
Oh, I got you. It wasn't proportional balance. Well, making sense of this. And I felt like, all right. So we're next going to transition, if you take a look at your agenda, to have a conversation about enrollment and the North area overcrowding, and I'll pass it off to Paul Tandy in just a second. as you know, we had a connections committee that came out of the task force work, and I'm actually personally not terribly informed about all of that work. I don't know a whole lot about. That's something I haven't probably learned as much about as probably a lot of people in this room. But what I do want to share before I pass it off to Paul is a little bit of data that, regardless of what I know about that situation, these data, I mean, it's pretty clear we have to do something and come up with a strategic solution to these things. And this all relates to our strategic plan. Goal 6, responsibly allocate resources. And the first measurable objective, personnel, time, and facility space will be allocated based on the mission-related needs of students and in a fiscally responsible manner. And, connecting things like that to student learning, it's somewhat removed, but it's more. Here's some statistics, because I'm a numbers guy in some regards, and here are some numbers that, just to highlight this. These are 4 schools. I'm, of course, keeping them anonymous, though it probably wouldn't be hard to figure out what they are. But one is from each attendance area. So it's not like they're all from one from each of the high school's attendance area. And so we have these different total enrollment for the students. So wide range there. Each of these buildings has 2 administrators. Each has 1 nurse. Each has 1 literacy coach, 1 math specialist. And we do have a little bit of difference in allocation for counselors. Not a whole lot. And then here's another key statistic that maybe we haven't looked at as much in the past, but definitely factors into this. This is the rate at which students come into the school and come out of the school over the course of the year. In one year, you obviously see, sure, large school, low mobility. And why is this a key important factor? If you're teaching in any school with a lot of turnover, you have a lot of answers for why that's important. I didn't put registrars up here because we have to have people enrolling these. And I don't know, does every school have 1 registrar? I don't know, we could find that out. Yes, is that a yes? So we could put that there too, 1 registrar. These are all elementary schools too, but so here's why the mobility rate is key. The data that I shared with you before from Visible Learning, and I showed you those sort of top 45 factors. Well, there were 138 factors overall that were in the research meta-analysis. And mobility as a negative impact on learning was actually 138th. Of all of the things that this researcher out of New Zealand looked at over the past 20 years, hundreds of thousands of studies, school mobility ranks 138th, dead last, having the most negative impact on learning than any factor, moving from school to school. So, we can't control students moving. I feel like we should all say that together. Students will move regardless of what Parkway does. So, how do we respond strategically? That is our question. That is our charge. That's our obligation and commitment to the community. So with that, I will pass it off to Mr. Paul Tandy. Give him a round of applause.
Have your clicker? Or? Yeah. I've only got a couple slides. Pick that left button. Okay. All right. You're probably asking yourself, why is Assistant Superintendent Kirchhoffer not doing this? Because he was chairing it. Well, he couldn't be here tonight. So remember, I'm just the messenger when we talk about boundaries, all right? I am your friend. Somehow he just, couldn't be here tonight. So I don't know if you can see this slide very well. I hope you can. This is actual data from St. Louis County from last year, and every dot on the map represents a household, a residence where a child was born in the district. Now, obviously they don't all choose public education, but I think if you're anywhere close to this, you can see the trend. Again, here's the boundary of the district. Okay? And if you look in closely, you kind of see a clump here, and you kind of see a clump there, right? So, it's what we've known, and we've been studying this through Project Parkway. We have a larger number of students in the south and a larger number of students in the north, and it continues to grow. One of the interesting factors, though, if you look at how many schools we have, 6 elementaries in the south area, 2 middles, and a big high school. In the north, we have 4 elementaries, 1 middle, and a pretty good-sized high school. But the south area clearly has more capacity, just in square footage space, than we do in the north. In a nutshell, kind of encapsulates the issues, but we've been talking about that all year, so I didn't feel like I really needed to go into that. remind you that we are not at an optimal position in our north, particularly in our north area. Yes, we have other areas that probably need to be looked at down the road, but the board has clearly said we've got to do something for the north area. And as you recall, the discussion was initially maybe we could do kind of a Band-Aid solution for 1 year and then do a major solution in the fall of 2012. And the feedback we got from principals and parents was, you know what, let's try to make it 1 more year, because we don't want to make students go to one school 1 year and then transfer again the next year. Let's try to see if we can't get through 1 more year. So that's our charge. What we've got to do is figure out how and when that decision will be made, so that we can go to the board and have something to implement for the fall of 2012. As I mentioned, in the north area, we don't have optimal learning environments. Some examples are at McKelvey and Craig. I was talking to Dr. Maxey, and she reminded me that we've gotten to the point where even though the enrollment may increase over our class size limits, and we would normally add a new section, in some cases we can't do that because we just frankly don't have a place to put them. So we add a TA. But the overall kids in the room, obviously goes up. We have orchestra and multi-purpose rooms, no storage space for equipment, and on and on. Gymnasiums with multiple sections in them because we have no other options. So it's not optimal. And it also puts pressure at the secondary level. I mean, we can't forget about that. And I know we have our secondary principals here from the north area. And it is a very mobile population, more mobile in the north, generally speaking, than the other areas. And we are not providing, in some cases, what we would hope to have as optimal learning environments for the kids. Another point there is that last bullet, and that is, as the task force brought together options this past year. I know a lot of you are in this room. For example, one of the options was, you could convert the Instructional Services Center, which used to be an elementary school, and convert it into another elementary age school. So instead of 4, now we'd have 5. Keep in mind, if we did that, aside from just the fiscal impact, that would require obviously redrawing boundary lines. So really, any option we choose is going to have some sort of realignment attached to it. So we're going to have to be undergoing this conversation in the next 6 months or so, pretty much regardless. So what we wanted to talk to you about tonight and spend a few minutes trying to get a little bit of your feedback on. We haven't done this in a long time in Parkway. I know some of you have been here a long time, and has anybody, when was the last time we redrew boundary lines in Parkway? Does anybody remember? Mid-70s? I know when we opened the early 80s. Is that about right? So it's a long time. We don't have a lot of corporate knowledge on how to do that. But in talking with the school board and the administration and working from the end result, the outcome forward, the feeling is that we need to have a decision made by November or December of this year. So if you plan backward from that, then the clock starts ticking. We can figure out how we can start plugging it in. So that's what we want to talk about. The two major decisions that we see that we need to be going to the school board are, first of all, that would be the final decision of the actual boundary changes. Prior to that, we're thinking around before this school year gets out, we would like to be able to come to the school board and get a decision from them on whether we're going to do it or not. In other words, we're not going to necessarily say this is how it's going to change, but that it is going to change, and we've got to set in motion a series of activities to make to make that occur. Excuse me. And we think that needs to be before we get out from this school year. I think I'm okay. Maybe not. So that's why those two boxes are gray, because those are two important board decisions. But we'd like to, before we leave from this school year, to be able to say publicly whether we are or are not going to do it, so people can start to prepare and the wheels can start setting into motion. All right, so tentative timeline is that really almost immediately we need to start looking at do we have a viable solution to solve our challenges strictly just through changing the boundaries? And so the Connections Committee, task force, is going to start meeting. We met once. Thank you, ma'am. And late March, 1st of April, they're going to meet again with Versatrans. And Versatrans is the vendor that provides the software for our transportation system. And they have people who do this. They're experts in developing scenarios based on your enrollment trends and so forth. And to remind you, the Connections Task Force is made up of the co-chairs of, I think it's 4 task forces: the Boundary Task Force, Full Day Kindergarten Task Force, Start and End Times Task Force, and the Efficient Allocation of Resources. So if you were co-chairing any of those 4, you should have gotten an email recently to come to a meeting on March the 31st and April the 1st. In addition to those people, North Area principals, and I believe the Central Area principals who might be impacted, like Mr. Gannon, as well as, I guess, what you call district subject matter experts, the transportation director and food services director, et cetera, facilities director, those kinds of people. So it's a fairly... Yeah. The co-chairs of the 4 committees were all co-chaired by at least one parent. We set them up that way. Ed Zumwinkle. He's a parent. Yeah, Ed's a West Area parent. Yeah. Comment is it's heavy on district employees. Well, I won't open the table up for that. I think the feeling on that is at this point, that's where it needs to be. Yeah, and you'll have a chance on the yellow sheet to give us your feedback. So that group's going to be meeting in March and April to determine, do we have some viable solutions? Do we think we have viable solutions that we can come up with something that'll solve the challenges? And so we're recommending to you that we change the boundaries. So we hope to get then a decision from them in May so we can announce that. And then what we're thinking is in the summer, we'd like to get feedback from the community, primarily on the parameters or the guidelines that Parkway has for changing attendance boundaries. We do have guidelines in Parkway in terms of how do you set your boundaries. In other words, neighborhood schools, making sure you have vertical alignment so you don't have kids going to multiple, from one school to the next, switching out to multiple middle schools and high schools and so forth. So during the summer months, get some feedback on that while the Connections group is continuing to look at possible options. And then right around the time we get back from school, we'd like to be able to match those 2 up, look at the feedback we've received, and then match that up with what we've already been doing in terms of data gathering and developing scenarios to have something to bring to the community when school kicks back up in August and September. And by then we'd also have some decisions made in terms of how it would be implemented. For example, would you have grandfathering? What would you do with siblings? Some of those decisions would already have been made so that when it's rolled out in August or September, that would already be done. So then what you could have then in the fall is that's when you'd have community meetings at any schools that might be affected. I don't know how we would do those, but be curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. But then by November, December, at some point, then we'd have to make any adjustments to the proposal based on that input in the fall and bring it to the board. So in a way, it's similar to the start and end times. If you recall, there was one proposal that was put out, received community input, and it was adjusted a little bit, and then the final proposal went to the board. So with that, Nikki, yellow sheets. Nikki's going to pass around some yellow sheets that has this timeline on it, and then a few questions. And if you could take a few minutes, how much we have, Tim? 5? How much time do we have? Why don't you let's take 10 minutes and write down your thoughts to those questions, and then we'll kick back up. Okay, one more minute. Try to wrap up your conversations. One more minute. Okay, if you would please be sure and leave the yellow sheets on your table when you leave, please, so we can tabulate and type up all the feedback. And keep in mind, too, we have a new superintendent coming in, and Dr. Marty has just fairly recently done this in his district, so we're going to be meeting with him. He's actually in town this week. We're going to meet with him to discuss this